you? Okay. Good.
Billy, Steven was saying, kind of with the way that Brooklyn's guards probed into the paint and attacked, that could be maybe a good lesson to carry over for tomorrow when you guys face a guy like John Wall who's really going to try to push it and bring in the defense in transition.
Yeah, I mean, they got downhill, quite a bit, but we knew that was going to happen beforehand because with the number of threes that they were taking, when you're closing out that hard to the three-point line, it's really hard to do both. It's hard to take away a three-point shot and contain the ball. So we got to do a better job when the ball does get driven at helping and then scrambling. We had some good scramble situations, and we had some ones we could have done better. But those teams like that are looking to take that number of threes, there's no way of getting around kind of having to scramble and rotate and get out on guards.
What, in your mind, what's, I guess, the blueprint for the ideal way that you do scramble and rotate and get out to those closeouts?
Well, you got to have communication on the backside when the ball gets skipped, and then the other part of it is, where you're trying to direct the ball once you do close out, because the ball gets to certain areas of the floor, now all of a sudden it's opened up even that many more rotations. It's a little bit easier if you can kind of keep the ball to one side, where if it does get driven, you've got in some built-in help, and your rotations are a little bit easier. I thought we got hurt a few times where the ball really got to the middle of the floor, and then it opens up a lot of things for the guy driving it, for people on the perimeter, for people that are behind the backboard. It becomes really challenging. So the big part is where you can funnel the ball.
Billy, you talk about scoring in deep paint and the importance of that. You talk about that pretty often, but
yeah.
Are you pretty happy with where y'all are there in terms of scoring in the restricted area, or do you feel like there needs to be some improvement, or it's a game-to-game thing?
Yeah, I didn't think in the first half we did a really good job of that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought in the second half we were much better. I think we scored 62 points in the second half. I thought we were much more balanced. And a lot of that had to do with the free throw line. I think if you look in the second half, we took 21 free throws. So generally when you're taking free throws, it's either on offensive rebounding or you're driving in there. And a good number of our free throws came through dribble penetration and getting to the basket. So I think we are doing a good job of that. I think the numbers show we're doing a good job, but I think we can be better and more consistent. And I think last night was a perfect example of that. Just okay in the first half, much, much better in the second half.
Do you factor in games where you think you probably should have gotten more calls at the rim, like for instance, like Russell absorbs contact and he makes or misses a shot?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought there was, some of those happened in the first half. He's in the lane all the time. I mean, he's as good as there is as anybody is getting to the deep paint and getting to the front of the rim. And I do think there's times where he is in there, he does get hit. And, I'm not saying it happened a lot last night or had any impact on the game, but clearly with as much as that guy spends time in the lane, he should be at the free throw line quite a bit, because of his ability to penetrate.
Do you, or let me start that over, sorry. In terms of Steven, the putbacks last night, not finishing the way he typically does. What's the message to him in terms of when he's getting that many offensive rebounds to continue to go through?
Yeah, I really didn't discuss it with him today very much just because he's done such a good job. I just think he needs to be a little bit more aggressive. I thought there was a couple there. And it's hard because when you rebound, you've got a lot of people on you and crowding you. To explode up and dunk the ball is sometimes difficult to do. But I didn't think like that he did anything wrong. It was just like one of those games. He's done such a great job and he's shooting such a high percentage from the field. It's not something that's really been a theme for him. He's been really good finishing. So I really didn't really talk to him too much about it. He's done a great job in that area for us.
Just to follow up on Eric's question about Russ before, the way that he attacked the rim when the game was on the line, to not be discouraged about what was happening earlier in the game. Just your thoughts on his willingness to kind of risk it in that scenario.
Well, we talked about it at halftime. I think at the half, I think we don't know what we were. We made 2 3-point shots to their 10. That was a difference in the game. And I think if you look at the second half, I think they made 7, we made 6. We made 5 in the fourth quarter. Our distribution offensively was much better in the second half. We took free throws, we took layups, and we took threes. And we took the non-paint twos that were there. In the first half, I think we scored 46 or 47 points, and I didn't think our distribution was great. And that's where I thought we made kind of that correction. And part of that correction is playing downhill. And when Russell gets down into the paint like that on a consistent basis, it opens up a lot of things for us. Now, early in the game, sometimes that can be challenged. Teams are somewhat fresh, they're rested. It's easy to load up, it's easy to get back in transition. As the game wears on, that constant pressure at the basket, can become fatiguing, and that's what what we really try to talk about at halftime is trying to wear them down. And the way you wear a team down, in my opinion, is by what you're doing on offense. The more the ball's being driven, the more it's being passed, the more they're having to scramble and close out, the more it's going to open up things by working a team defensively where you can break them down a little bit easier.
Hey Billy, what was your reaction to finding out that Paul hadn't made All-Star?
Yeah, I was really disappointed. You know, again, I've said this before. It's not about who should or shouldn't be on the team. I just think that when you talk about the 12 best players in the West, I have a hard time believing he's not one of those guys. He's played consistently enough. He's arguably the best two-way player in the league, if not, you know, one of them, no question. And you know, I just felt like he should have been on the team. I get a chance to see him. I don't comment about other players because I don't watch them play, but I see him perform every night, and he does it on both ends of the floor. He's up there as one of the league leaders on the defensive end of the floor. Offensively, he's been really efficient, shoots about 40-something% from the three-point line, scores. You know, he does a lot of different stuff. So, you know, for me, if that's what the team is about, is putting together the 12 best guys, I believe he's one of them.
I don't know if you saw his comments last night, but Carmelo was asked about not making the All-Star team after the game. He said, "This is a full sacrifice for me, not a half sacrifice." Just your thoughts on him and the kind of maturity to embrace that coming into this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that before. I think that when you take a player like Carmelo, who's a 10-time All-Star and is in his 15th year of the league, and he's done it on the offensive end of the floor at just an incredibly high level for his entire career, and then come into a situation where you have to maybe look at doing things a little bit differently because that's what's best for our team, I think speaks to the competitor in him, speaks to him wanting to win, speaks to his unselfishness. And I think even more importantly, it speaks to the leadership of really trying to help Paul and Russell, you know, in a lot of ways, that he's trying to play in a way that's going to also facilitate what they do really well.
You know, last year was about a 10-day narrative of Russ not being made a starter in the All-Star game, and this year we've got a little bit of the talk about Paul George. Do you worry about this getting in the way, question after question about him not making the team, or stuff that doesn't have anything to do necessarily with the Thunder playing?
Well, I mean, it's like last year we had to deal with Russell not starting, right?
Yeah.
So this year it's Paul. So I mean, you know, it's part of what goes on. Paul's a grown man. You know, I think he will always handle himself well. He always kind of puts the team first. I'm sure he's going to be asked about it, but I know where Paul's heart's at. Paul wants to win, and Paul, I think, enjoys being around the guys and enjoys playing with these guys. So I think his focus is just on playing and performing. You know, it's out of his control. You know, there's really nothing he can do about it. Nothing we can do about it. So I think with the kind of guys we have, we need to move forward and focus on what we've got to do collectively as a group.
Does it give you
really-
any kind of little, I don't know, excitement or happiness just when guys like Al and Bradley, guys you coached in college, make it?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, those guys. I mean, Al, I think this is his 5th time, so you know, personally, was really happy for him and coaching Brad. I think this may be his first time. I mean, yeah, I mean, you're always happy for those kind of guys, especially guys that you've coached and you've had a relationship with. You know, when their career was first starting off. I mean, those guys, when I had them, were 18, 19 years old, and it's been fun for me as a guy that's worked with them and coached them to see the way their career's taken off and the way they've grown as players.
You've been really consistent all year, just about talking about how the way Melo's been able to adapt and how much he's been willing to sacrifice, and he's been really vocal about it too. You also mentioned at the beginning of the year that you didn't really have a relationship with him much before this year, so I'm wondering how the process of how adaptive he's been, how that's been compared to your expectations for him coming into the year.
Yeah, I mean, I never try to go into any relationship, you know, guys with different teams or different situations, you know, and I know probably that situation in New York was challenging for him. You know, I haven't gotten into any great detail about that with him because I wanted to start off fresh and just, you know, not, you know, pass any judgment, negatively or positively. I wanted to get to know him. So the day before training camp, you know, there was a group of us that were kind of at dinner and kind of welcoming him. There's a lot of people there, a lot of players were there, so I didn't get a chance to spend a lot of time with him. But, you know, over the course of training camp and the season and games and practices and traveling on the road, shoot-arounds, you know, I try to communicate. You know, that's really all it is. And Melo's a very, very direct guy, and I think he is very truthful and he's an honest person. And you want to talk directly with him, and you want to speak openly and honestly to him. And he's always been of the mindset is you know, whatever you need me to do, I'm going to be willing to do to try to help the team. That's the way he's always been. And you know, some of the things that we've tried to do and have him do that would be beneficial for our team, he's done. And not only on the offensive end of the floor, but even on the defensive end of the floor. He's been really versatile to power forward spot. There's been games he's been in pick and roll coverage. Last night he was in switching. You know, we've tried to create situations where he can kind of get some trail threes, and you know, he's a guy that against switches we need to find him in a low post. He's a great player, and he's still a great player. And I think that's where his greatness is because he can kind of come onto a team and he can take he's got a multitude of skills. I think people look at him as being the scorer. Maybe the most underrated attribute he has, in my opinion, is he's a tremendous passer. He's got great vision. I think defensively he's really smart and he's a great communicator. So there's a lot of times you don't see a lot of the things that show up in his game that he's capable of doing. You know, I don't know how much pick and roll he played in New York, but we put him in pick and roll because he can play in pick and roll, he can score in pick and roll, and he can pass at a pick and roll. So, you know, how do I as a coach find creative ways to use him in a way that's going to help our team as well?
Russ and Steven ran a kind of slick little action to get Patrick a three-pointer in the strong side corner.
Mm-hmm.
Will you explain kind of how that read works, where I think Steven screened his own man basically to force help to come in from the corner?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for Steven, he does a really good job of kind of reading how things are being guarded. So there's times where he'll screen his own man, and there's times he'll screen, you know, who's ever on the ball. And he did a good job in that situation, setting a screen where kind of freed Patrick to get a shot because he was on the baseline. So I think for Steven, he does a good job as the game's going on, reading what's open, what's available. He does a really good job communicating with me of what he's seeing out there, of what may be some possibilities and some options, of some wrinkles of things that we can do just based on what he's seeing from his vantage point. So he's always paying attention to those things.